If you've seen movies like The Bates Motel, Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, or even my personal favorite, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Ed Gein was the inspiration for all of these movies. Who exactly was Ed Gein? Stick around, let's find out. Hey my people, welcome back and happy Friday. It's Freaky Friday over here at Wahnowellie. Today we're going to be doing a true crime story. So I'm going to introduce my new segment that I'm super excited about. It's called my Badman Shanga series. And Badman Shanga, for those of you who aren't Liberian, it's what we call like the villains in movies. When I was little, my cousins and I would watch action films, and we would always call the bad guy Badman Shanga. So when I was thinking of like a name to call this new series, I was like, this is totally gonna be my Badman Shanga series. Take a seat, don't grab nothing to eat because this story is really disgusting. Our first Badman Shanga is Ed Gein. So now who exactly is Ed Gein? They call him the original Psycho. And if you saw the intro, like I said, movies like Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, all those movies were inspired by Ed Gein, the original Leatherface. So to understand Ed, I feel like we have to go back to his childhood because, you know, when people grow up to be bad, they always like, how was their childhood? How did they grow up? So Ed Gein was born Edward Theodore Gein on August 27, 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. La Crosse, Wisconsin doesn't really sound like a fun place. But yes, so Edward was born there to a very abusive mother named Augusta and an alcoholic father named George. And Ed also had a brother, an older brother named Henry. The family lived a very simple life. George couldn't really keep a job because he was always somewhere drunk. And Augusta was super religious, like super religious. She drilled into her children's head that, you know, women were evil, they were whores, were corrupt. And then it's like, well, Augusta, girl, you're a woman too. But Augusta was like, nah, she is exempt from all that. You know, she was holy. She read her Bible. So while doing my research, I was like, but then how did Augusta get with an alcoholic George? And apparently George used to be beating her up too. They said George used to go down to the bar, and when he came home from the bar, he used to beat up Augusta, and then she would go and pray that God would kill him so he could go to hell. So that's the kind of environment Ed grew up in. So they lived in La Crosse for a while, and then Augusta said that the town was becoming too evil. So then she convinced George to move the family to Plainfield, Wisconsin, to a farm that was super isolated, and that's where Ed grew up. Ed was also bullied as a child. I read that he had these like really weird mannerisms. He would just laugh uncontrollably, like at random times. Like he would be in class and he would just like bust up laughing. And when the teachers would ask him like, what's the joke? We trying to laugh too. Ed would be like, it's an inside joke. So he was bullied for all these weird quirks and things that he had. Ed didn't really have friends, and when he was able to make friends, his mom would chase his friends away because apparently everybody was evil child. The men were evil, the women was evil, the pastor was evil, the town was evil, the farm was evil. Everybody was evil but Augusta, okay? So that's how they lived for a while, and then unfortunately George passed away from a heart failure. They said it was due to his drinking child. R.I.P. George. So George passed away and left the boys with their mom, and they grew up very abused, indoctrinated into all of Augusta's hatred for basically everything but her Bible. In 1944, Ed and his brother was on the farm, and they were burning up March. Now I don't know what March is. I'm assuming it's grass or something. But they said they were burning up this stuff, and then a huge fire happened. Now when the fire happened, Ed said his brother Henry went missing. So then Ed then went to the police station to report his brother being missing. So they were thinking like, oh, maybe Henry like died in the barn fire. But they ended up finding Henry a couple of days later, knocked out. Well, first of all, he wasn't burned up, so he clearly didn't die in the barn fire. He had like wounds on his head, like someone had like knocked him or something. But the police never investigated. They didn't think like, oh, this is kind of fishy. Why is Henry knocked out in the barn? He has a head wound. Ed said his brother was missing, but he was able to lead us to the spot where Henry was laying. I think Ed killed his brother. I think that was Ed's first murder. His brother. Now you ask, why would Ed want to kill his brother? So apparently, Henry had been dating somebody, child. Henry was like, Mom, I know you said with me it's evil and everything, but I'm trying to get out there. I'm trying to meet someone. I don't want to die alone. So Henry was dating a single woman in the town and started spending quite a bit of time with her. And then Henry started talking bad about Augusta. And if you knew Ed, Ed loved his mama, child. He was like Bobby Boucher. I love mama. You don't talk about mama. So Henry started badmouthing Augusta to Ed. And Ed started taking offense to that. So for me, that was my reasoning for why I think Ed took his brother out. So now George gone, Henry gone, it's just Ed and Augusta, okay? In that same year, Augusta ended up having a stroke where she was bedridden, she couldn't do anything for herself. So Ed basically became his mom's caretaker. And Augusta was very ungrateful, okay? Because they said while Ed was taking care of her, changing her bedpan, you know, bathing her and everything, she was still abusing him. You know, she was telling him how worthless he was, how he wouldn't be anything without her. I would have left that old biddy in that bed too. So yeah, I would have left her in that bed, in that house, on that farm by herself. Because you ain't about to be abusing me and I'm here freaking wiping your butt, okay? But anyways, in 1945, Augusta ended up having a second stroke. And that stroke took her out. R.I.P. Augusta. She was gone. She was in the earth. Or maybe down there. But where was I? So yeah, so Augusta died, and this was basically Ed's breaking point. Ed became super isolated. He ended up boarding up all the rooms in the house and taking his mom's room and creating like a shrine to her, leaving everything exactly how she had it. I think the only room they said that he would use was the kitchen. So now during this time, you ask like, what the hell was Ed doing to survive? Because if the farm was a working farm or not. But they said that Ed was very good with his hands. So he went around doing like local carpentry work and stuff like that to get by. And I even read that Ed used to babysit. Yeah, Ed used to babysit a couple of the kids in the community. And it was weird because the kids used to tell their parents that Ed would like talk about strange things. Like they would see like skulls in Ed's house, but the parents would just dismiss it like, oh, you guys are telling stories, that's not true or whatever. But my whole thing is, I'm not sending my child off to go stay with some creep that lives on a farm that barely comes into town. We don't know anything about him. See, there was no African people in that community because African people would be mad nosy. Would have been knocking on that door like, we just come into fellowship with you, Ed. How are you? What's in there? What's going on, you know? There was no Africans, there was no black people in that community because we would have been all up in Ed's business. So yeah, so now that we know about Ed's background, let's talk about Ed's crimes, okay? How exactly was Ed caught and what were his crimes? And what made Ed a serial killer? Why is he on the bad man shot list? So Ed initially gained the attention of the police in 1957 when a store owner by the name of Bernice Warden went missing. So Bernice's son had went to see his mom at the shop and he was like, damn, where my mama at? Mama was nowhere to be found. So, but there was a receipt by the cash register. He picked it up and whose name was on the receipt? It was Ed Gein, and there was no other receipts after that. So he figured like this was the last customer that saw my mom. He alerted the police. He told them what happened. And the police went out to Ed's farm to ask him some questions. So initially it was only 2 deputies that went out to the farm to question Ed. And when they got to the farm, They ended up going to, I think he called it like the out kitchen or the summer kitchen. Ed was fancy, child. He had a summer kitchen. I ain't never heard of a summer kitchen before, but Ed had a summer kitchen. So when they opened the summer kitchen's door, warning. So when they opened the door, there was a body that was decapitated. The body was split open from the chest all the way down to the pelvic area. And it literally had like intestines and everything just dripping out. It kind of like he was draining the body of blood, but they didn't know who the body was. So that was the first gruesome sight that they saw. So when they saw this, they decided to call for backup before going to the main house. So when they saw this, they decided to call for backup because they had no idea what kind of horrific things that they would be able to find down to the main house. So when backup came and they went into the main house, this is where we discover Ed's house of horrors, okay? Now, I don't know if I'm going to include pictures because, like I said, it's very gruesome and I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. But you can go on Google and Google these images, okay? So when the police entered the door of the main house, the first thing they saw was someone's heart. Yes, like your heart was boiling on the stove. So not only was Ed crazy, he was a cannibal as well. And this like disturbed the townspeople when they heard, because Ed used to like give meat to people to eat in town. So everybody in that town was eating dead bodies and they didn't even know. This is why my mom always told me, don't eat from strange people. Don't be going over people's houses and eating, because you don't know what people are into these days, okay?
You eat from people.
No, I don't. I don't eat from people, babe. Who I eat from?
People.
Not strange people that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like the strange isolated man down over there. I don't eat from him. So proceeding further into this house of horrors, they found 10 severed heads with faces peeled off on the wall like it was decoration, right? And they said some of the heads, like he had lipstick on it, and the heads were very like recognizable. So he would peel the skin off, but then keep like, I guess, everything intact. Like, I don't know if he was wearing the faces, which I'm pretty sure he was wearing. So you wake up today, today's Monday. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. What do I want to be today? Do I want to be her with the red lipstick, her with the pink lipstick, her with no lipstick, you know? Ed had options, okay? So they found the 10 heads, lips attached to like drawstrings. They had a belt made out of nipples. I don't even understand how you can make a belt out of nipples, but yes, Ed had a belt made out of nipples. He had a chair that was made out of like a sewn skin, like the seat of the chair was someone's skin. He had females' fingernails and noses in various boxes. He had female genitals in a shoebox. He had like bedposts made out of head skulls. At that point, no, at the point where I saw the decapitated body in the barn, that would have been the day I quit. I would have been like, all right, you know what? I'm out. I would have even made it in the house. Or maybe I would have made it in the house because I'm nosy. But as soon as I saw the heart that was boiling on the stove, that would have been like, y'all can have my badge. Deuces, I'm out. Because who knows what else that crazy dude had in there. But moving along. So yeah, so after seeing all that, Ed was arrested, taken down to the precinct. And Ed admitted it. Ed was like, I killed her. But I'm insane though. I'm crazy. You know, they love to plead insanity. Like, yeah, I'm crazy. But I do think Ed was a little bit crazy though. So while interrogating Ed, he did admit to the murders of Bernice Warden and Mary Hogan. But then they wanted to know like where he was getting all these body parts from. Like, it's not like you go to the store and buy, you know, battery and things like that and put parts together. Like, where are you getting all these parts from if you only killed 2 people? So apparently Ed was going to the local cemetery, digging up graves, and he had a friend. He had a friend named Gus that was helping him. But then when Gus found out how Ed was like decapitating these dead bodies, Gus was like, now I'm gonna help you dig up the graves, but I'm not helping you do all of that, okay? So Gus stepped back, and then Ed continued to dig up graves by himself, take the bodies to his house, And then Ed would like pick parts that he wanted from the body, and then sometimes he would take the body back and bury it, or sometimes he wouldn't. Now, why exactly was Ed doing this? So Ed's whole purpose of doing this was he wanted to make a skin-like replica of his mom, because you know Ed loved his mom, a child. So Ed was like sewing together a suit from like mismatched body parts of women that looked like his mom, and he had like leggings made out of skin. He had like the shirt, and then he would take the genitals from like various women, like the boobs and other female genitalia, and sew it onto the fabric, and then at nighttime he would wear it and go walking around the farm. And he said this made him feel closer to his mom. They also found out that he had killed another lady who had went missing, Mary Hogan. She used to own a tavern, and she went missing in 1954, and she was one of Ed's kills. So those were Ed's crimes. So now what exactly happened to Ed, our friendly neighborhood butcher, after he admitted all these things, okay? Ed did not go on trial because they said that he was crazy. So they sent him off to a psychiatric hospital. Though he admitted it, he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. And in late 1957, he was deemed unfit for trial. They said Ed was too crazy. They was not putting Ed up on trial, okay? They said, this man is crazy. Off to the mental asylum he goes, okay? Mental asylum? No. Don't give me that look. Shut up, please. They said Ed was crazy, so they sent him to the psychiatric hospital. You know, they love to plead insanity, child. After they sent Ed to the mental institution, in 1968, they were like, all right, Ed, we don't think you're crazy no more. You got to come back on trial. We gotta talk about this, okay? So they put Ed on trial. He was found guilty of killing Bernice Worden, reportedly due to financial reasons. So I don't know if you're trying to rob her or what. But even though he was found guilty, they said that at the time in which he committed the murder, he was insane. So child, they sent Ed back to the psychiatric hospital, and that's basically where he spent the rest of his days. And then in 1989, he died of cancer and respiratory problems at the age of 77. And Ed's buried in an unmarked grave. They had it marked, but apparently people would go and deface the grave, so they ended up putting him in a different grave that was unmarked. So what happened to our infamous farm? What happened to the House of Horrors? So apparently the farm was attracting a lot of tourists. Think about it, like people love going on like ghost hunts, witch hunts, love touring haunted mansions. Even me, I love being scared, but I'm like a scaredy cat, but I love being scared. So that's kind of like an attraction that I would have wanted to go to. So a lot of tourists were going to visit the farm, and the people in the community didn't like that. So they actually ended up putting the farm and the house up for auction. And then mysteriously one night someone went and burned the farm down. So yeah, so apparently an arsonist burned down the farm, and that was all she wrote.